Hello, happy Saturday. Gonna do this Perky opening. So what I got here, it's a fuselage, obviously. It's this Perky, and I'm gonna see if I can open this up and check out what I got here. I just like to use these little blades. They've been dulled. I take the edge off of these things with 320. Allow me to open this thing up. Just work your way around it. Let me turn this other camera on real quick. Working with this GoPro over here. I'll tell you what, these GoPros, they have decent pictures, decent photo quality, but it's so glitchy. Seems like it takes forever to get them to work right. Get this thing started with a small blades and work these bigger wedges around it. I was debating on whether to leave these pins in there. But I might as well. Hindsight, I probably should have taken them out. So just molded around them there. So this one looks really good. Now, when you get these voids on these molds, basically 90% of the time or more, you're going to get air bubbles right on this 90-degree edge. You just got to take a lot of extra time. Make sure you get the resin work down in the gap. So the hardest part is to get the second part out. Now, what I had to do before, and I'll probably have to do it again here, is use this wooden block I put into this plug, and that will allow me to pry it up. So let's see here. Not sure how much pressure I'll have to put on it. Let me get a bigger screwdriver. I won't be on too long here. I just wanted to stream this here. Stream it for posterity. Get a little bit of a bite in there. Now, I built these molds so rigid that there's no flex in them, and it's probably a good thing, and it's a bad thing. So this is what I had to do on the other pot I made. Take this stick here and give it some whack in here. Usually the shock of the tapping, it'll break the seal. Just lined up right here. I heard a little bit of popping going on. Get a sharper screwdriver here. Yeah, when I started to work on this stuff, I thought it was a big deal when you got one like this, but it's really not. Adjust this camera here. Get out here and get a little leverage on it. If I can get into that block, I think I'll be able to get it. I think I'm going to open that up with a Dremel. Get this Dremel here. Give me a little bit to hog that out. The right bit. Alright. See if I can get plugged in here. All I'm trying to do is get a better purchase on that hole there. Get these pins out of here. These straight pins were put in there to align this thing on the center line on the parting board. Alright. See if we're getting anywhere here. Took a little persuasion. So that did all right. Looks like from looking at it initially, there's no air bubbles. Now one of the things I had to do, the Perky, this right here, it had a curve to it right here, and the mold line needed to be split on the curve. Well, the curve on this part is a negative draft angle. So what I did is I filled it with clay, and then when you mold this thing, right back here at that curve, the top's not going to match the bottom. So what I told Robert to do, when he molds this thing up, he's going to have to put some extra chop in here, and that chop is going to fill the void. He's going to have to sand down to match it. Yeah, Len. Yeah, compressed air. This thing is so tight, there was nowhere to get any air in it. This mold, you could drive a car on it. Normally on a thin part or a mold, you can flex, and you got to have a crack somewhere. You know, you shoot the air. This was tight. But Len, I think if I was doing a bigger part, in little hindsight, I don't see what would be wrong with putting a valve somewhere up here and maybe back here. Fill it full of clay, lay your part up, and then actually shoot the air through that way. But that's something to really think about. When I was laying this thing up, I was fiddling around, and I had a bristle land on this mold face, and I took an X-Acto to get it, and I think that bristle broke the PVA right out here at the edge, which it's on the flange, it doesn't matter. I got a question for you, Len, if you're still on here. What kind of parts do you make? Are they RC, control line, or Is it modeling stuff? Just curious. I'm always looking for good advice like that. And really, Lynn, I think it's a situation when you start doing this stuff, if you could think ahead of the project to where all the problems you could come up with, try to plan for all the things that might happen. So you can see a little bit of the PVA coming up. I was really pretty happy with the gloss I got on the PVA. The other thing I try to do, once I spray the PVA on this plug, I try to put it over there in an enclosed, I got an oven. It's not turned on, of course, but I just get it out of the dust so it's not sitting around getting contaminants in it. Yeah, the other thing I'm going to tell Robert when he lays this up, I'm not sure what route he's going to go, but probably put some carbon fiber sprues on it somewhere to grab a hold of it. The other thing right here, there's a little bit of negative here, a little lip sticking out. Should have been filled up with clay. Created a lock up there, but it came off. Okay, quarter midgets. Yeah. That's neat stuff. Yeah, I worked over there at JT. Believe it or not, I didn't do any composite work. My job was to do their woodworking. But they did a lot of neat stuff in there. They have some really good talent. I used to tease one of them. I said, man, you've been around so long, you probably at the start of the composites, you know. He was really good, probably do just anything. And I think in composite work, I know there's a lot of help out there that never used to be there on the internet. But been there, done that. It's worth its weight in gold. Now back when I got into modeling on a bigger scale where I needed to source out materials, I'd have to go down to the library, and they had a catalog in there. It's called a Thomas Register. And the Thomas Register had it was basically a phone book, and it was divided up into names and categories of the stuff that they carried industrial wise. So I don't know how much PVA you mess with, Lynn, but this is a high temp mold. It's Resin Services. It's a HTR 250 and a 302 surface coat. The 302 surface coat, it's with a 302X curing agent. You know, at a warm shop temperature. I mean, it's fast. You know, I mixed it up in a double cup, and by the time I got, you know, over this mold, and I worked really quick, it was starting to get thick enough to where it's hard to spread. So but yeah, a lot of neat stuff. I learned from a lot of different people. So this has got really a pretty decent gloss to it. But what I was getting ready to say, the PVA thing, I'm not sure how much PVA you use, but my my success rate is based on PVA, especially on a mold like this. In order for me, I feel, with this 302X, now I've done it on a prop mold. Let's say I make this part, this half the mold, and I've got a way to actually get it in the oven and post cure it, and then put a chemical release on it, like a free coat or Chem-Lease or whatever they use. And then I go with another chemical release to get the second part off of it. I've had success with that. But this being high temp resin, room temp cured without a post cure, if I put a chemical release on this plug and against this face, I don't know, it's a risk I wouldn't want to take, because the PVA forms a physical barrier instead of a chemical barrier. I've gotten away with it if it's cured right, but I've had a few bad lockups. I'm reading lens. That's neat stuff. An EF1 electric setup for 125 miles an hour. Let's see. Make nitro with a removable cowl, or nitro with a pipe half embedded in the right fuse, and also electric by molding the right half of it with a cowl. Okay, that's cool. I don't know if you're from this area, but Indianapolis area is full of racers. I'm sure there's maybe some other places too, but when I'd get off work at JT from my woodworking job, I'd go over there. I'd go over there to Earl's Performance, and he'd have the popcorn going for me, so I'd be eating free popcorn, and then the soda pop and a candy bar was, I don't know, whatever it was, a couple bucks, but popcorn, I guess, was free. I got to feeling so guilty because I was eating so much popcorn. I had to stop by and get him a couple cases of Cokes. But going over there to Earl's, I love going in there because you never knew who was going to show up. You get all these race car drivers and the mechanics, and they had some characters, and I got a kick out of them. So it was a lot of fun. It really was. Mark's a heck of a nice guy. So right here is a little hickey sticking out. That should have been filled with clay. I don't know how that got by me. That's why it was sticking in there so dang bad. It's always this little stuff that'll kill you right here. So, because really this nose, there's no draft angle right here. Matter of fact, when I pulled that plug out, it scraped the plug a little bit right here on this little hickey. It wasn't cleaned up. But the neat thing about this 302, you can take this and wet sand it and then buff it. It shines up really nice. I'm pretty happy with this. I mean, I didn't get any air bubbles on this one. Normally I get a couple. So put the camera down there, see if I can get a different view. I'm over here with this GoPro. This thing here is still locked up. So, this little GoPro 7. See, heck, it doesn't matter what button you press. So basically what I have to do at this stage, I have to come in here, pull the battery out, restart it, and hope for the best when it comes to restart, see if your file's alright. But neat little concept, but man, these things are a pain. It's a love-hate relationship on these things. Especially when you have to have something a little bit more reliable. Not that this streaming deal is really important, but so here's another thing, Lynn. Let's see. Air inlet built into the mold, yeah. Okay, Sask. Another thing, Lynn, you're probably talking about air scoops built into the mold and stuff. I've seen a lot of molds over the years that had 3 or 4 different parts to it. So really, to solve a draft angle issue back here at the tail, where you had a negative draft angle, is you could split this mold here into 3 parts, so you'd have side to side and then top, but I just went with the compromise, put chop in there and sand it down later. So, and then right here is where it wasn't filled with clay, so I scraped this plug on the way out right here. And it might have a few scratches, but basically it looks really good. It'll be fine. Just a little touch up there if I'd ever use it again. One of the things I found out is if you use PVA, this stuff here works good. It's a MR1. It's like a mold sealer wax, and I traced it and I got more coming. I'm pretty sure it's a Lily Ram 306B, and I've used a lot of tins of wax and I really haven't found anything any better than this stuff here. So here's a little part if you're into the okay. White fox sack. I'll have to look out on a map. No, for blowing the part out. Okay. Okay, I got you. This is a little control line related deal, but it's a little bell crank I was working on. Problem was, these things here were made for the lead outs to go this way. They wanted to change it so there's a post that fits in here. So instead of the lead outs terminating like this, it goes around a round button that's pivoting on the post going vertical. This took me a while to think about how I wanted to do it. The trouble is, making a mold, you're stuck. That's it. You know, every part you make's got to come out of the mold. Versus if you make that stuff in a sheet, you can always go back and when you water jet cut it and change the program. Get a little wax on this thing. Yeah, I don't know, Len, if you'd be interested, but I got not a lot of videos, but I've got some of them that making different parts. A lot of the information I got on making some of this stuff, different configurations and parts, I picked up elsewhere. I mean, you got a ton of websites out there that deal with this stuff. I'm not really sure if any websites deal with composites as it relates to control line. Everybody's got their unique little twist on whatever they're doing, whether it's racing or whatever. You got Ramey RC. He's got a lot of followers. He does a lot of huge stuff, a lot of composite work. I think he started out with a lot of composite work, and then he sort of branched off into the entertainment part of it, showing his airplanes as they're flying. Oh, the wing cutting. Wax and end up having pieces broken off. Yeah, the wing saddles because of the sharp corners. Yeah, now the little history on the wing cutting. I wasn't the first one to come up with triple cord or styrofoam wings for model airplanes. There was a guy that popularized the cores, triple cord. His name was Bob Hunt. He perfected it. And I think there was somebody before him that started doing it. I'm not sure. I'd have to ask him, but there's somebody out there. But he took it to the next level. And he does them by hand. But I think it was the article that came out in either Flying Models or Model Aviations. It was an article that dealt with cutting foam cores, and it was a foam cutter that only cut one side, and it was on the drop door method like I've got on my cutter, where you adjust the ratio, the door falls, and it pulls the core through. But the deal was, it was sort of like the feather cut, but the guy had a big flat table, and the block set on the table, and as the door fell, it pulled the wire over the block with the templates on it. And all I did is took that idea with the falling door, and I added to it, and I constructed some bows that would float on the glass. I had two of them. So I just sort of I guess expanded on it, you know. I think everybody that gets a hold of an idea, you know, they make it their own. But I had a buddy that did a foam cutter. It was a CNC thing, and he was always fighting it. And of course, I've never had a computer that was relevant after 4 or 5 years, so. But you know, my little cutter over there is still good. It's all analog, and if you watch this channel enough, you're not going to find anything digital as far as machinery here. It's like a hand crank lathe or carving these plugs. The only thing I got electronic are these stupid cameras, and I can't keep them running. I have trouble with them. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Robert does on these parts. I think he's going to try to vacuum bag some carbon down in here. I'm going to tell him he better PVA it for a while until he can post-cure these molds. But I'll tell you, with this HTR 250, this resin service 1063, I don't know what I did with it, but I had some rocket tubes. My grandkids were messing with these rockets. Let me get this camera right. It's got software in there and he doesn't like being flipped. So anyway, my grandkids were into these rockets, so I thought I'd make some tubes. It'd be a good experiment. So I took this HTR 250 1063 on some polished mandrels. Long story short, I stuck the tube on the mandrel. I couldn't get it off, and I had a free coat on it. It was old free coat, so I'm not sure if it was completely that, but anyway, the problem is getting the part hot enough while the resin was still wet enough, so when the resin actually cured, the aluminum mandrel was at full expansion. Because if that resin cures really fast, really tight, and then the aluminum tries to expand, you don't get the benefit of the aluminum expansion on the mold. So I was cutting some fiberglass off of the mandrel. But one of the things I did, I took that HTR 250 on the mandrel. I thought, well, maybe after the fact, you know, it's already hardened, I'll stick it in the oven again and I'll ramp it all the way up to, I think I had it to 400 degrees. And it didn't help. I still couldn't get it off the mandrel. I had to run a Dremel tool down and slice it and peel it off. I was lucky enough not to get into the mandrel, but that was a learning experience. Carbon Kevlar hinge, yeah. Create the hinge. Yeah. Robert Sparky, he made a stab for this Perky, and what he did is he laminated the Kevlar in between two carbon sheets he laid up. So the Kevlar is his hinge, and it worked out really well. I saw a video, a guy had a Dremel tool with a diamond blade on it. He had his wing in a fixture, and this Dremel with a diamond blade was on a precision track, and he was able to lower that thing down and somehow slice into this carbon. That's where the tooling is probably 5 times more complicated than the plane. I think it was a Japanese guy, if I remember right. It wasn't in the States. But you know, me putting this stuff out here and doing this, it's basically to transfer some of the information I have. The hobby is, I wouldn't say it's dying, but it's hurting for information. And there was a guy with a YouTube channel, and he described it like the train's going down the track and it's gathering all this information. Now we got AI, all this stuff. Everybody's gathering information. The train can only hold so much. So the guy at the caboose back there, he's chucking off perfectly good information off the back of the train. So to make room for more information. So I think it's good to get rid of stuff that's no good or doesn't apply to you, but I was just hoping that after I'm dead and gone, somebody wants to see how to carve a plug. it'll still be out there somewhere. So that's the idea of this channel, just to put stuff out. Now, Len, if you're into this composite stuff, you know that when it first came out, it was top secret stuff. They wouldn't tell you anything. And the internet's opened that up a little bit. So let's see, what else have I got to do today? I think that's pretty much it. I just wanted to open this mold. As I'm sitting there battling this thing, prying on it, you never can tell. I'm thinking, man, it's live. Get a catastrophic lockup live. So this is, you see I retain quite a bit of gloss in there. So I think if you go in there and you buff this out a little bit, you'd end up with a really good mold. And if it's post-cured, then you'd be able to go in there and put some kind of chemical release in there. And really, this mold is stout enough to where you could, I'm not going to, let me put it this way. There's about an 80-90% chance, I believe, this thing would survive an autoclave. It's really tight and dense. It's really solid. There's no voids. And you'd have to post-cure it up to 400, which according to the spec sheet, you should be able to cook it at 350. So if you're doing a 250 autoclave pre-preg or 200, I think it would be perfect. So, but with that being said, you know, there's a lot of design features in this mold that might not work out optimum for that process. Here's the bigger pod mold. This is the part that came out of that pod mold. It's West Systems. It's just it's boat resin, not high temp, but it's for an RC plane. Now what I've done when I pop these halves out of a mold, I just basically put them together like this and squeeze them together, and I put tape on them and I hold them and get it to where, you know, it's perfectly in line. Now put a drop of CA on it, and I'll just go around there and tack it all the way around 360. Of course, this will be open here, and then the back will be cut off here. So I'll be able to go in there with fiberglass tape and put the seam on the inside with tape. But that's how I did that one. Ideally, what should happen is when this mold goes together, it comes back together like this. The front would be open, and then the back, or at least one end open, so that way you could go through there, put the pieces back in the mold, and then actually tape them in the mold so the mold would actually align the parts. But this was the way it was told to me to do it. So I think this is going to work for Sparky. So we're going to find out. I'll be watching him, see what he does with this thing. Yeah, the Q-40s, the F1 planes. I think the F1, if I'm thinking about the right airplane, Len, I'm thinking that, wasn't that RC pylon where you got points for the finish? Formula One, yeah. Yeah, that's, everything ebbs and flows, I guess, but this stuff is so labor intensive, and it's so I don't know, so contingent on so many skill sets. I think they really lose a lot of people because of the complexity of it. One of the things that helped me build this mold up, you can go back, well, matter of fact, this laying half of this mold up was on that GoPro camera. I was going to edit it, so I'm not sure if it came out or not. But I use this DTO81, this sand. Basically, it's a filler for resin to make a dough. By making a dough, you build up the thickness of the mold. So I got 3 layers of, I forget what it was. Let's see. The surface coat, 3 layers of 3733. The tooling dough, and then 3 more layers of 3733. I'm going to write that down. I try to mark on these molds what it is. I've got molds that I made years ago. I'm almost positive they're high temp, but I can't remember exact resin or if I post cured it or what. So my takeaway advice when you start doing this stuff, even though you don't think you're going to need it, make a logbook and number these molds that correspond with the logbook, so you could go through there, flip through there, and you could have the amount of resin it took to saturate each layer, the type of resin, the post-cure schedule, just a whole diary of the construction of this thing. Now, if it's room temp, it doesn't matter, you know, it is what it is. But when you want to start cooking parts, you got to know what you got and, you know, how high a temperature to go to. And this high temp surface coat really almost looks like room temp surface coat. You can't really tell the difference. So when I was doing some woodwork at JT, I had a mold, and they said, well, let's stick some pre-preg in there and put it in autoclave. I'm thinking, well, I'm not really sure what it is, so I didn't want to risk it. Part of me said, yeah, I need to do that, but I thought, well, I'll drag a mold back that I know is going to work. Yeah, I was talking to some F1 guys at Muncie, and they were super knowledgeable on building these things. If that's the event we're talking about. Spinners, yeah, run a joiner tape. Yeah, I spent like 2 hours talking to a couple people in Muncie about those airplanes and how they were building them. The guy was super nice, and I started asking him about resin and different things. And I've talked to a lot of different people concerning types of resin. And the way I understood it, this was from years ago, you have Shell Chemical or these big chemical companies, petroleum, and they refine the raw ingredients, which the cornerstone ingredient back in the day was an EPON, and EPON 828 was the cornerstone. And then they added diluents and different things, and they come up with different formulas, and they've got some that are more chemical resistant, some that are whatever. And it was almost like you could take a resin and hardener, and you could, within a certain envelope, unlimited changes, you know, as far as viscosity and everything. So then I think it filtered down from the big chemical companies to the resin formulators. So I guess you could say West Systems or Gusion Brothers, I think is how you pronounce it. They were one, and then you had Resin Services, and then you had AdTech. And each one of these formulators had customers, and they'd formulate for that customer. One of them in Indy, a friend works up there, is like Lord Chemical, and they do a lot of automotive stuff. So it's all custom formulated. And then, of course, after that, it gets down to where the formulators go to Boeing or McDonnell Douglas or race teams, and then some of it hits the shelf as DevCon 5-minute, 15-minute epoxy, you know, all these consumer products. So the problem was getting into this stuff. You couldn't go down to the hardware store, and you couldn't go to any store and buy any of this. So you had to know where to find it. And that was a problem. You really had to dig. And I still have to dig a lot. You know, I was trying to find the Lily Ram 306B, right? And I'm not sure if it's going to match that mold sealer wax I got. Which, you know, a wax is a wax, right? But one of the things when I was waxing this plug, I used this Paste Whiz, okay? And it's really good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but if this wasn't completely buffed off, the PVA would fisheye. And with this product here, this sealer wax, whatever, I think it's 306B if I'm correct, I've never had any fisheye problems. I mean, once you wipe this stuff down, you're good to go. So that was always the problem, trying to find the right resin. Now, the way to develop a part in a mold is not so much the name brand. Don't worry about West, Systems, Gusion, Resin Services, or all these different things. What you've got to look at is a spec sheet. So how much heat will it take? What's the viscosity? How hard is it? The surety, or they have all these parameters. The gel time. I know if you're doing a big, huge mold, you better be cutting your resin down into small pots as you go, or resin infusion. That's a whole nother thing. So I think it's contingent on the spec sheet and not so much the brand, because you can have 3 or 4 different formulators and all have the same stuff basically. So anyway, that's just the gist of it. Now, one of the nice things, I don't know, Len, if you're into this, but if you get a hold of somebody at Resin Services, or this was sent to me, shows you how far back it goes. I dated it January 6, 2000 when I got this catalog. And believe it or not, 25 years later, they still carry this stuff. Now, I'm sure there's probably some that are discontinued and they got new ones. I know they do. But this here, they just broke it down into surface coats, laminating, casting, adhesive paste, and then they got polyesters back here. And let's just say laminating. So let's say hand layup laminating. This says standard room temperature white. And here's the thing, you're going to have a resin, LR100, and they're going to have 2 different options here, or maybe more, where you can pick your curing agent. So if you go to a different curing agent, your properties are going to change. Right off the bat, instead of 20 minutes pot life, you've got 35 to 45 minutes. So by just adjusting the hardener is your pot life. And here's a Boeing specification laminating resin. All different stuff. So it was always good to go through these manuals and pick out different things and study them. Basically, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. You can go out here and you start messing around too much, but stick with what they got. You know, I'll tell you one thing I did do. I took this West Systems, okay, this 105, real quick, I'll talk about it. This 105, that's their standard resin. And basically you got fast, medium, and slow hardeners with that 105, and it's like a 1 to 5 weight per volume, and it's just through a pump. Standing out here one day, and I thought, well, what would happen if you take Resin Services HTR 386 curing agent, which is, let's see, one of these. I got a jug somewhere. That's 212. But anyway, I got a 386 curing agent. And I stick it in that west at 33%. HTR 386. Now, they've got a resin that's 386 and they got a curing agent that's 386. Don't ask me why. But anyway, I mix it up, and I'm not sure, but I think the properties of that west system, instead of being 150, 180 degree top out temperature wise, it would actually go up into the 200, so it turned it into a high temp resin. Oh yeah, okay, so the F1 was the the finish, but also where you pulled take off first. Yeah, I try to use infusion resin because I can vacuum bag more of the resin out of the cloth. One of the things, I think what you meant by that, Len, is you're using resin infusion on a hand layup because it's lower viscosity and you're able to vacuum bag more resin out. Is that correct? I think that's what you meant. And to be, well, when I was making these bell cranks, okay, this little part here, it was sort of tough to make because it had 36 inches of toe, start to finish. It keep wrapping around the mold. And basically, if I use HTR 250, which is sort of like a West Systems, it was pretty viscous, where it's hard to get enough resin in there. Resin to carbon ratio. So what I did, I went with a Shell Epon 815, which is a Shell Epon 828 with a diluent, so it's a lot thinner. And then I took Resin Services HTR 386, which is a high temp curing agent, at 33%. So the Epon 815, the viscosity went way down, and then the HTR 386 curing agent at 33% brought it down even more, because normally this stuff is 24% or 12% curing agent. So this was 33%. So I think water is viscosity of 1, and I think that, don't quote me on it, but I think infusion epoxy is around 400 or 500 viscosity centipoise. So I think that's basically what I had back then by accident. Yeah, so anyway, that's the gist of that. These are the little molds, and to make this part, what I always wanted to do is get me a little bit of that resin infusion stuff and see how it worked in this part. This was the mold. It's 3 laps around with 48K, 36 inches long. I had pins in there, like these little bell cranks. But the neat thing about that mixture I had, the 386 and the Epon 815, was by the time I got 3 laps around and I started packing some chop and pushing it down in there, the resin started to thicken up a little bit. So when I started to really put pressure on it and sop up the extra resin, all the carbon toe wanted to stay down in the mold. So as an added benefit, I guess, the cure time. But it took forever to make those stupid things. That's why I was going to try to go with this carbon plate with this thing here. And that's just vacuum bagged down. Now this is a pretty good compaction. This is HTR 250. And in order to get this compaction, once it's in the bag, the peel ply and the breather and everything, I was really pushing hard on it. Now I was working it really hard as I could without puncturing the bag and forcing all that resin out. And I was able to come up with a really good part. Now it's not autoclave quality, but it's about as good as you can get hand laying with a vacuum pump. So yeah, that's a lot of fun to do. So anyway, Len and anybody else watching, I'm going to jump off here and get some lunch, and I'll probably come back on in the next couple of days, lay up some parts. Robert was going to come by. He's leaving Brodax in Pennsylvania. He's swinging by on the way to St. Louis, and we might do a live stream in here, talk about some stuff. This mold's for him, so I might be on later today, or he might be on. So if you watch the stun hanger deal, it'll be over here if it's today. But I want to thank you guys for coming by, and thanks, Len. I enjoyed talking to you, and I learned quite a bit. Always learn from people that chime in here. I'm going to write your name down so I can remember it, Len. Some of the people I meet in person, they say, yeah, remember me? I was the one on the chat or something. Let's see. Right, Prather kits use Weston E-glass. Carbon nose to the wing, yeah. About 2 layers, yeah. 2 ounce, claw 2 ounce. Yeah, that's good information, Lynn. Okay, nice talking to you too. Thanks for coming by and commenting. I sure enjoyed it, and talk to you guys later.